Guys, I'm blown away. I honestly am. To think that this channel would get to 1,000 subscribers after only 4 videos is wild to me. It's insane. I really want to thank you all so much for supporting me on what was really quite an experimental endeavor for me. I just wanted to give this a shot, and it really seems to have taken off. I couldn't be happier, so honestly, thank you all from the bottom of my heart for this. In celebration, I sent out a post here on YouTube and on my other platforms as well, asking for basically any questions. I wanted to do an AMA. If you guys had anything you wanted to ask me, then you could post those. We had quite a few posted on YouTube, which is awesome. And I'm going to try and go through all of them today. Spoiler, I did actually try recording this once before, and there were a few things I wasn't super happy with, most notably the length of it. I went for about 40 minutes, which was a bit too much. But actually, since then, a few more questions have come in anyway, which I've decided to incorporate. So I'm just going to do this all again, and I'm going to try and really limit myself to short answers. So let's get right into it. I should say I'm aware that there's a sort of a variety of people in the viewership here who come from different backgrounds. Some people who are more interested in sort of ASMR, audio, RP stuff in general, and some people who have a much deeper, richer history with size difference content specifically in all of its various forms. I know that we're all likely to have different levels of experience and knowledge on these subjects, so I'm going to try and keep things as open and as welcoming as possible for everyone. But yeah, let's get right into it. We've got a few questions that are about my sort of relationship with size difference content in general, my history with it. So I've sort of front-loaded those, and we can go through those to begin with. So we've got 2 questions that are quite similar to each other. We've got FFJ3J5G, who asks, where did you get the idea of big and small? And we have Risky Becky, who asks, what drew you into GT, and what's your favourite kind of GT trope? So for anyone unfamiliar, GT is shorthand for giant, tiny, or big, small. It's basically any kind of scenario where there is a big character and a small character relative to each other. And to be honest, it's the kind of thing I've had an interest in for my whole life. I can't remember a time I didn't have a particular fascination with this kind of thing. I wish I could say I knew specifically where it came from and why, but it's just kind of one of those things that's always taken root in my mind as being a real fascination. And that's what my Shardro persona is all about, not just here on YouTube, but on social media, on DeviantArt, where I'm a digital artist as well. I have been for over 10 years now. And I'm all about size difference content. In particular, tiny women is my fascination. In terms of my favorite GT trope, I really love anything that has any direct interaction between the characters, particularly holding the tiny character in a giant hand or something like that. It can take so many forms, and in some ways feels a bit like a cop-out answer because it's so non-specific, but I really do love that in basically any form it takes. Kawulfi Audio asks, what got you into doing these ASMR RPs and being the giant speaker? So I have a Discord community, again, all about tiny women and the sort of content and the community around that. And some people were sharing audio RPs and things like that on there, and people were talking in voice notes and things like that. And at some point I gave it a go. I've got a sort of a history of anonymity, this being on the internet. Not many people had heard my voice before. So as I did that, some people were saying that they really liked my voice, and I just kind of got inspired, and I thought, maybe I should give this a go. Especially because it feels like there's a particular gap in the market for this kind of thing. There is size content audio stuff on YouTube, but a lot of it is F4M, a lot of it is a tiny male listener or something like that, and that's not really for me. So yeah, it felt like I had something to offer there, and it does feel like that's paying off. In terms of being the giant speaker, that's just the role I feel like I was born to play. I don't mind necessarily the idea of being tiny, but the idea that really speaks to me is being big for a tiny woman. I think there's an interesting note here that a lot of people will use the term ASMR, but to me it doesn't quite feel right. ASMR to me is when someone is coming up really close to the microphone and is really trying to get that sort of sensory response, that physical tingling sensation in the body of the listener. And that's not what I'm trying to do. I think there's been some confusion about this in the comments before as well. I'm just trying to do one half of an RP and let you guys fill in the rest. And I think that means that gives me a bit more freedom in terms of tonal variety. I'm more than happy for people to still use ASMR when referring to my content. It may even be technically correct. I just tend to avoid using it because I think it can give the wrong impression about what I'm actually trying to do here, yeah? Which artwork or story ignited your love for the genre? Is a question from AwesomePony3947. So I started looking into artwork for this kind of thing probably later than... I'm sort of surprised by how long it took me to decide to just Google it and see what the internet had to offer. And that was probably only about 11, 12 years ago. It wasn't long after that I started making stuff of my own. And the kind of stuff I bumped into was, I think, Jitensha and Steve Reno were the first artists that I saw on DeviantArt. And I later found people like Heretic and Lord Zarnor as well. They're absolutely fantastic. I'll show some of their artwork on the screen, and I'll link, of course, to their galleries in the description as well. Though I should warn you, for anyone who isn't particularly familiar with this kind of stuff, it might be a bit of a bombshell for anyone not prepared, but there is a significant kink dimension to this kind of content. It's not something I'm ever going to explore on this channel, but you should be aware of that before looking at those galleries that I've posted, because most of those artists do have that kind of stuff. But I love that kind of stuff myself, so that was a real entry point for me. Bonazai Girl has asked 2 questions. She asks, what's your go-to size? My go-to size is perfectly normal human size, for me. I don't want to be a giant, I just want to be me. But if you're asking the size of the people I want to interact with, I would say generally about 3 to 6 inches is my sort of preferred window. I'm happy to go above and below that a little bit as well, but to me, like I've said before, the interaction is such a key point to me that I think if someone is too small, you kind of lose that. It loses its magic for me a bit. So yeah, somewhere that I can hold them in my hand, you know? And Bonazai Girl's second question is, think you might do a continuation with the Borrower one? I'm more than happy to go back and do continuations of previous installments, previous episodes, if the interest is there and if it feels like there's somewhere for the story to go. With the Borrower one, I definitely think that there's scope for it. At the moment, I'm quite interested in sort of seeing what the breadth of content can be before going too hard on sort of making sequels and long-term storylines and things like that. But I will say that the Fairy RP is one that has done particularly well, and I'm really interested in sort of exploring that world a bit more. So if there's one I'm going to do a sequel to, it's that one. But I'm more than happy to go back and do the Borrower one as well. The King of Eggs 212 says, your channel has done a lot to expand my knowledge on size difference tropes, so I have to ask, what about it do you find so intriguing to dedicate a whole channel on? I'm very new to the idea, so I want to know everything that there is to it. Oh, that's a really difficult question to answer. I find the whole concept fascinating, and as evidenced by my previous answers, it's been a big part of my life. I think scarcely a day goes by that I don't think about it in some form. I think that there's something really interesting about the implicit power dynamic that it creates between two characters. I think just the physical size difference immediately changes the kind of relationship that two characters can have with each other. And I think that there are times in media that doesn't happen, and that characters are just different sizes, but other than that, they just interact completely normally, and that feels kind of weird and hollow to me. I think it's amazing the kind of differences that the simple change of someone's size can do for the dynamic between two characters, the kind of relationship that they might have. The fact that one is sort of implicitly bigger and stronger than the other one could ever even hope to be, that they could do something on a whim with minimal effort, but it is massively impactful to the other person. I don't know, I think there's so much to explore there that it feels sort of unendingly fascinating, to the point where I think it strikes me as kind of strange that some people can see it and it's just another trope, you know? And I know that that's just, you know, different people resonate with different things, but I don't see a way to not find it utterly fascinating. I know I keep using that word, but it really is just the word that sums it all up for me. And now I think the remainder of the questions are all mostly about the sort of audio and video production process, so let's really get into that now. Littlest Lily asks, what's the most challenging scenario or effect that you've done and or would like to do? I should point out, for anyone who isn't already aware, this is Littlest Lily, who has written half of the scripts that I have used so far in my videos, and we work really closely together to come up with new ideas and to write things together. So she's a massive help to me, and she's a wonderful, wonderful person. So join me in thanking her for her hard work and dedication, because this channel wouldn't be where it is right now without her involvement. So thank you, Lily. To answer the question, most challenging scenarios or effects that I have done are mostly actions that don't really have sound effects, but that you still need to try and convey them in an audio soundscape. Things like picking someone up, right? You can do that quite gently, in theory, and it wouldn't really make much of a noise. But you don't want to just say verbally, I'm picking you up now, and expect the listener to believe that that's what's happening. But it's difficult to know what to put there instead some of the time, so I often opt for a sort of clothes rustling kind of sound, sometimes a little thump of sorts, depending on how gentle it's supposed to be. But it's a real challenge to get that to feel just right. In terms of what I'd like to do, I'm not so sure about challenging necessarily, but something I really like to do is I would like to play with more voices, have other people in the mix more than just myself. I think that would be a really interesting thing to do in terms of the kinds of stories that we could tell, while still having the listener being the central character that the story revolves around. I think there's a lot of potential there. Ajax as Existing asks, how long does it take for you to make a video? I'm genuinely curious as someone who is considering recording stuff like you have. In real time, it takes me quite a while, as evidenced by the fact that I rarely release more than one video in a month or two. But a lot of that comes down to finding the time, the motivation, the inspiration, and actually an opportunity to record, so I like to do it when the house is empty. I live with my girlfriend, and I tend to like to do it when she's not around, just because it makes sure that there's limited background noise. I don't need to wait for a silent moment. I can just be sure that the only sounds the microphone will pick up are mine. Once I've got a script, and to be honest, the script is one of the hardest things to do and one of the most time-consuming. Once I've got that, recording it is pretty quick, cutting out the outtakes is pretty quick, and then sound effects, if I'm really dedicated to it, I can probably knock out in a day or two. But yeah, getting the script done and being inspired to actually write the script in the first place is really what takes the time. So that is really going to be dependent on you. Rob Horror 240 asks, do you sometimes doubt your voice? Yes, all the time. I think that's a pretty natural thing. Your voice always sounds different when you hear it back than when you're just hearing yourself speak. And I don't know, I've had a lot of positive feedback about my voice. I'm very happy to say, but I definitely do listen to my recordings back and think, is this really as nice and soothing as it ideally should be? And for me as well, I noticed that when I try and do a sort of a really calming, soothing kind of voice, I sort of I bring my voice quite low, and at this point it either sort of like this, it sort of sounds a bit thin, a little bit I don't know, it's not as full-bodied, and then the other thing is it can get this sort of vocal fry that I don't really know what to do anything about. It doesn't. Do you see what I mean? It loses its smoothness. But that's such a core element of the audios that I try and do and the things that I try and convey. So, I kind of just have to own that. And I guess it's up to you guys whether you think that it's bad or not. But it certainly leads to me doubting myself from time to time. Yeah. It May Charm asks, what other concepts do you have for audios you'll make? I have, along with Littlest Lily, we have a document where we've sort of outlined some of the ideas and scenarios that we've come up with. Probably not all of them will get done. I think, again, it is important that the idea resonates with me or with us before we can write a script. And then, of course, to subsequently take the time to perform it and do all the work to bring it to life. But we have a few things on that document that we'd like to do. Without giving them all away, there are a couple that are particularly interesting to me. We definitely have ideas for sequels to the Fairy RP, which I'm really interested in doing more with that. That really excites me. And then something that's completely out there is something that's a pipe dream. It may never happen, but I would absolutely love for it to happen. Is we've bandied around the idea of a radio play kind of thing, right? Not necessarily something that is made for with the listener being a character, but something where we can have a cast of characters, a cast of actors, all playing their role, and you, the listener, just sort of listening along to this narrative that's unfolding. It's a very different kind of content that we would do. It involves a lot more people to be involved. It requires a lot more long-term planning, I suppose, to make something like that happen. But I think that it would be really interesting for the kind of storytelling potential that offers. I think it's quite liberating then, because you can tell whatever story you want without having to make sure that the listener is able to play a part without actually playing a part, if that makes sense. So I'd love to do that kind of thing one day, but will it ever happen? Who knows? KittyFair51 asks, how do you go about writing your scripts? Do you look for inspiration anywhere, or is it more brain blasty? Well, I think that size difference content in general has a lot of tropes around. There are a lot of images online, art that people have made and things like that, which sort of imply a story, and so they can be quite fun to just look at and think, what is the actual story going on here? But we can always sort of bring it back to the tropes that we know and the things that resonate with us. In terms of writing a script, how do we do it? It's kind of... I don't really have it down to a fine art at this point. I guess I just sort of start writing and see what feels natural. You do have to be quite careful to make sure that when you're pausing for the listener to insert what they think is being said, you do have to be quite careful that when you pause for the listener to sort of fill in the gaps of what's going on, that you still sort of guide them in the right direction to imply what it is that they should be doing in this scenario without just telling them what they're doing. Or saying, oh, you think that we should do that? Oh, you say this, but you don't want to just dictate the story to them. It needs to feel a bit more natural than that. I'm not sure I have any brilliant guidance at this point as to how it can be done. I think probably just by reading it back and editing and getting feedback from other people as well. If you want to sort of let people read what you've got and feedback to you, hopefully you can start to isolate the parts that don't feel quite right. And if you can figure out why they don't feel quite right, hopefully you can find a way to refine them. Is probably the best advice I can give you at this point. Just read them through, read them out loud, make sure that the dialogue feels natural, and try not to make things feel too jarring or too forced for the listener. I know that sounds incredibly vague, but I hope that that's still useful in some way. ForeverLurk83 asks, what hardware and software do you use when recording and editing? Any tips or tricks you're willing to share? In terms of hardware, I keep it pretty simple. I don't have, a big audio studio or anything like that. I use an ancient now Blue Yeti microphone that I have hanging on an arm above my head, and I have it on a shock mount and a pop filter to try and reduce noise and wobble and things like that. And in terms of software, I record on Audacity, I edit in Reaper, and I make the video in DaVinci Resolve. Now, there are a few good reasons for this. Audacity, and this goes into the tips and tricks a little bit, Audacity has a really good noise reduction or noise removal feature. All you have to do is find a point in your recording, whereas that sort of background hum is, if you've got a sort of fuzz, you can just isolate that, highlight all your audio, and Audacity will just kind of get rid of it for you. Reaper does have a solution for that, but in my experience it's not as good or not quite as easy to use. But I will say it's definitely a step worth taking, especially because most of the time we won't have perfect sound recording facilities. We won't have completely dead background noise when we're not speaking. There'll usually be some kind of fuzz there. So if you're looking at doing this kind of audio, I really recommend reducing background noise as much as possible. Engineer your room to suppress noise as much as possible. Stay close to the microphone as well to increase the contrast between your voice and the background noise. Also helps to reduce reverb, by the way. And run that noise removal thing and kill it. In this section, I've chosen not to do any noise reduction, so you can hear what my setup sounds like before I do any of that. You can probably notice a little bit of a hum in the background. That's what the noise removal would normally do. If that was much louder, then performing noise removal would probably start to chip away at the quality of the sound of my voice as well. So while noise removal might get rid of that sound, it would also harm the overall quality of the recording. So you really want to do as much as you can to reduce the noise in the first instance, and then just do a little bit of noise removal after the fact to just clean it up a little bit and make sure it's as crisp as it can be. And then so that's recorded in Audacity, noise removal done. I then take it into Reaper because Reaper is a much better tool for audio composition. If you're wanting to add lots of sound effects, tweak them, add filters and apply effects and things like that, change volumes, add fades over time. This is all stuff that Audacity really kind of struggles with, but in Reaper it is trivial. It's an amazing piece of software for this kind of thing. So if you're doing complex soundscapes like I tend to do, I really recommend using that. And then DaVinci Resolve is a brilliant free video editing tool. I don't need much complex for these videos. It's basically just an image and some text. But, it can handle a whole lot more as well if you're interested in that. And the final question here comes from Rachie Ace L4E, who asks, what's the funniest or oddest thing you've ever done in order to create a sound effect for your audio ASMRs? I think it was the Borrower RP, which ends with the listener being dropped into a bathroom sink, and I needed to make the sound of the borrower's feet hitting the porcelain of the sink, and that was tough. I mostly source sound effects from online if they're difficult ones for me to make myself. I've looked for footstep audio, and it's not the best all the time. It's very specific, and there's usually a lot of other sound going on in these recordings as well, so just isolating it to just the bit that you want isn't easy. So with this one I had to try and make my own, and this isn't the one I ended up doing for the record. This isn't the one I ended up going with, but I took a small plate, I lowered my microphone down, and I just started gently patting the plate against my belly to try and make that sort of soft pattering noise. I felt absolutely ridiculous doing that, but I thought it might work. In the end, it didn't give the sound I wanted anyway, and I ended up just sort of, I think I tapped my fingertip against that same plate, and I think that sounded better. And I use that sound effect quite a lot now, actually, even outside of sort of feet on porcelain. But for footsteps in general, I think it works quite well for me, because it's a really soft, isolated footstep that then I can have just a few variations of it, and I can stagger them around and make it sound like a more natural series of footfalls. And that about does it. Again, I want to thank everyone for your support in bringing this channel up to the point that it is now. This is one of many things that I'm trying to do at the moment. As Shardro, I do a lot of stuff, and this year has generally been quite a quiet one for me. I haven't really done much in the way of art either. And then outside of this as well, I've got a lot of stuff going on in my real life. I'm a very creative person. I have a lot of projects going on all the time, more than I can ever realistically dedicate the proper time to. So I hope you don't mind that these videos take a little while to come around sometimes, but I want to make sure that when I do them, that they are of a really good quality and that I can be proud of them. This is never going to be a job for me. It's never going to be a significant, source of income. And I don't want it to be. I don't want it to ever start feeling like an obligation, because I think that will be harmful to the quality as well, and I think that that's not fair to you guys. So my promise to you is that you will never see ads on my videos or anything like that, because that's just the worst. I hate ads. So I'm never going to do that. If this channel does ever turn out to be something quite big, then maybe there'll be times that I do live streams of maybe not audio editing. I mean, maybe audio editing, who knows? But maybe things like, drawing the thumbnail for a new video or something like that. And then maybe doing super chats or things. But honestly, that's still a long way off if that ever does happen. And whatever I do, I'm never going to do it in such a way that you guys find it intrusive, because I don't think that's fair to you guys. And it just feels like it ruins the experience for me. So that's my promise to you guys. Hopefully we continue to grow, but even just what we've got right now is so amazing to me, and I really am grateful to all you guys for everything you've done. If you have any more questions for me, or if there's anything you don't think I answered particularly well in this video, do feel free to leave a comment, and I'll be replying to everyone, I promise. And other than that, I look forward to showing you my next video, whatever that turns out to be. Thank you guys so much for being here and for listening to this all the way through to the end, and I wish you all the very best. I've been Shardro. Have a great day.